I love to open these conversations by sharing something that I saw that you posted online. So this is from, what are we calling it? We're calling it now the app formerly known as Twitter. This is something that was on your X. Are you a fan? Are you a fan of X? Are you sad about X?
I am not. I am not. Yeah, it's a different world on there.
I feel the same. I feel like it feels different. I feel like it's angrier.
Well, I feel like I had a family and that family disappeared. I'm like, "Where did you guys go?"
And quite literally, they've disappeared because people are deactivating left and right. Okay, here's what you put on X. You say this: when do we move from sacrificial love to being a doormat? We cross this line when others want love that requires us to disrespect ourselves, when others' requests become demands, when we must tolerate language that trespass our mental, emotional, or physical property lines. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think I came to that when I realized that as a pastor, I never know where is that line between faithfully following Jesus and really going beyond what Jesus asks of me in order to make this person happy with me. And that was just such a blurry line, and it was exacerbated by my own codependency. The fact that I couldn't feel good about myself apart from how my people felt about me. And so that made it really difficult when it felt like, gosh, okay, I am going to have to sacrifice like time with my kids or time with my wife, or worse, I'm just going to have to accept the fact that they don't value me and value my emotional well-being enough to not ask. So I'm just going to do whatever they ask me to make them happy with me. And I think a lot of Christians, we find ourselves in that place of like, well, they asked me to do it and it's going to be, quote, unloving not to do it. And I'm supposed to do the loving thing as a follower of Jesus. And so we just do it over and over again.
Taylor Swift has a line in one of her songs, and she calls herself pathological people pleaser. Is that something that you've struggled with in your life?
I think people pleasing is a symptom often of a much deeper issue, which is a loss of self. We don't know who we are apart from who we are to other people and who we think others want us to be. And so people pleasing is really about us trying to meet everybody else's expectations of us and to gain our validation from being what others want us to be because we don't know who we are apart from that. And so I think of people pleasing and approval seeking and peacemaking, as really us trying to get others to affirm an identity in us because we don't know what it is apart from that.
Your latest book, Ike, is called Good Baggage. I love that title, by the way. Subtitle is How Your Difficult Childhood Prepared You for Healthy Relationships. Before we go any further, can you just talk to me a little bit about why you wrote this book and some of like your background in childhood?
Yeah, so my story, just to give you a little background, is I grew up in a home where my father had what we would call clinically an alcohol use disorder or alcoholism. And as you know, that leads to all kinds of dysfunction in a home. It leads to broken relationships. It led to my parents' divorce. It led to different forms of abuse. And so that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. And then, fast forward to like college, and it's so funny. I think I thought I escaped all of that without any baggage, without any kind of impact on my relationships because I was really passionate about relationships. People came to me for relationship advice, like all of that kind of stuff. But then kind of getting married myself and realizing, no, I'm carrying a lot into this relationship that I didn't know I was carrying until I was in that intimate of a relationship dynamic. And so I began kind of my own journey when I realized that being an adult child of an alcoholic actually shaped me in particular ways that I just thought was true of everybody. And there was a book called Adult Children of Alcoholics that lists 12 common characteristics of children who grew up in that environment. And as I walked through those, I was like, this is me. Like they are reading my mail. And so realizing, okay, this has shaped me in particular ways. Let me learn the negative ways that that's impacted me. And in that journey, I began to discover Actually, there's some things that my childhood put in me that actually I can use for the good of my relationships if I can learn how. And so that was where this idea of good baggage came from. Is I'm carrying baggage from my childhood, but there's stuff in there that I can actually use for good now too, which is kind of counterintuitive.
This is kind of a segue because I had a note. I wanted to mention this to you. As I've been following you, I call you a wife guy. And this is my term for people who there's like it's a thing. I love wife guys. My husband's a wife guy. They're like the people who like just often casually bring up their wives and actually you did it before we even hit record. You're like, "Oh, my wife loves you." Like I love wife guys. Okay? They're safe people to have around. And I wanted to you guys do ministry together. For those of you who don't know, his wife is Sharon Hottie Miller. We've had her on the podcast. We love Sharon here. You guys pastor a church together. You honestly have a similar dynamic, I think, to my husband and I. But something I wanted to ask you as I was going through your book is how do you feel your background has impacted your marriage?
Really the biggest thing is, and this isn't even the baggage itself as much as something that seeing the relationship my parents had, seeing what they went through, created this passion in me to see my marriage go differently. And so that meant I had this willingness, I think, to do things to bring health and healing to my marriage that my father, quite honestly, wasn't willing to do because it cost too much from a pride standpoint, from an acknowledgement of, I need help, I need counselors, I need people in my life. And so seeing what my parents went through gave me this passion to see my relationship go differently. And I think that's kind of the root of all of the good baggage is I don't care what it costs. I want to see my relationship be healthy because I know at the end of the day, that relationship, my marriage is going to be the greatest determiner of my mental and emotional health and my contentment of anything else in my life, quite honestly. And so I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to try to make that relationship healthy.